Don for our presentation today.
Thanks, Dale. Okay, can you ever, there we go. Fantastic. Thanks, Dale. Again, my name is Don Mitkus. I am a consultant with the Student Assistance Center, Prevention First, and I'm glad to be back with you again. This is number 5 in our series, and today we're going to be talking about positive youth development, a little bit about its origins, a little bit about the research, and a little bit about the concepts behind positive youth development and how it can be helpful for you in your buildings working with your students. It's a little bit of a shift in frame of reference as far as where traditionally we've gone in our thinking with how we help kids out. So no further ado, take a minute and just kind of think back to when you were a kid, when you were a teenager. Who was popular? What were some of the challenges you faced? Who were some of the biggest influencers in your life? Who were the people that made a difference, that put you on the path that you're on now? What things helped you through the difficult times that really everybody faces as they're going through childhood and adolescence? And how was life then similar or different from the lives of the teens that we work with today? Certainly it's been a long time since I've been a teenager and many things have changed, but some of the core things that have stayed the same are germane to the concept of positive youth development. So if you think about it, there's quite a bit of surveying done, and if you look at who are the top 2 most popular teen role models, who are the 2 groups that have the most influence, or top 2 people in someone's life that have an influence on a teen's life. And we have a number of people. We got T-Pain, we got Fergie, we got Taylor Swift, we got Miley Cyrus, but really the top 2 are now and really always have been parents and teachers and educators. These are the folks like yourself that are working directly with kids that are going to have some of the biggest impact on their development and the direction that they go. The amount of influence we have cannot be understated. So what are a little bit of history? Back in the 1900s, we discovered the area of study of childhood and adolescence as a special period of learning and development. Even if you look back at the art before the 1900s, children were portrayed as little adults. Definitely seen and not heard was the order of the day. But with the groundbreaking work of folks like Piaget, we understand that there was that childhood and adolescence had specific stages of development, and that there were special things going on, and that a 2-year-old was not like a 5-year-old, which is not like a 9-year-old, which is not like a 14-year-old. And that about 110, 120 years ago is when we started to discover and quantify these ideas. And then in the 1950s, the federal government began funding several programs to address issues of troubled youth. That's when it was recognized that that adolescents could go awry, and that something systemically could be done to help those teens at risk. And then in the 60s and 70s, there was a great expansion in the number of interventions to respond to families and children in crisis. We started to see the development of community mental health centers. We started to see some programs creeping into the schools to address troubled teens and troubled youth. And then in the 80s, we actually started doing some research. Some theories began to emerge, some decent research, where theories began to emerge with an emphasis supporting youth before problem behaviors occurred. So some research, this is where positive youth development really got its start, this is where it began, was why wait until students are actually in trouble to intervene with them? Why not work on kids and supporting them and hopefully prevent issues and problems from developing? And in 1991, the National Institute of Mental Health identified 3 factors that most strongly influenced health-related behaviors. And no, that is not my prom picture. So the behavior influencing factors include a person's intention to engage in the behavior, the lack of environmental constraints that might prevent the behavior, and the individual's skills or ability to engage in the behavior. So for those that we begin to see that there's both some internal locus of control and some external environmental factors that factor into whether or not someone was going to engage in risky behaviors, risk-taking or non-prosocial behaviors. So prevention research. What some of these things that we have a large body of very large body of research that's investigated the question, how can we predict and prevent negative behaviors? We've mentioned risk factors before, those conditions and factors that increase the likelihood of negative behaviors such as violence, risky sexual behaviors, school failure, dropout, substance abuse. And you've also heard of things like protective factors, all the experiences and conditions that protect or buffer the effect of the risk factors and increase the likelihood of the child or adolescent engaging in positive behaviors. We've learned a lot from this prevention research. The study on Washington University, a couple of guys, Catalano and Hawkins, synthesized these research findings in their Communities That Care model. What they identified was 20 risk factors that predict the increased probability of 5 youth behavior issues that we're concerned about. And those are substance abuse, delinquency, teen pregnancy, school dropout, and violence. So, and these risk factors are organized in different domains such as community, school, family, and individual peer group. For example, in this slide lists the community risk factors that are shown to indicate increased probability for some of these behaviors. So one of the things that does pop out on this slide is that extreme economic deprivation, that last row there, is a risk factor that can lead to all of these behaviors. So the overall focus of prevention research has been on risk reduction and problem prevention. So one of the when you focus mainly on problems and issues, it leads to the question, well, what about these folks that are able to bounce out of these horrible conditions and succeed and have success and be relatively intact and successful? Are these anomalies, or what explains their success despite the odds that are against them? These folks that may have had firearm and drug availability, and policing was not very good, and exposed to a lot of violence on television and in the media, and they are moving around a lot, and they come from poor backgrounds. Yet there are those that succeed despite those odds. And it led to a body of inquiry that resulted in resiliency research. What makes these folks more resilient than their peers that are in these situations with them that wind up becoming involved in substance use or delinquency or violence? So the investigation of resilient research has shifted to the question, why do many young people do well despite the negative environment in which they live, despite all these risk factors? So much of the research is based on longitudinal studies that have followed groups of individuals over years from childhood to adulthood. So some of the, one such study was done by Amy Werner, and she followed close to 600 people over the course of 40 years. So when you talk about longitudinal studies, there are a few that have the length or breadth of Werner's study. So as you can see, there are individual traits and skills such as social competence, problem-solving skills, autonomy, and a sense of purpose, and a belief that there's hope for the future. And then she also identified external or environmental factors of caring relationships, high expectations for success, that the expectation was that they would do well by those that, by parents, by educators, and opportunities for meaningful participation, meaning that they had a chance to be part of a group, to be involved in leadership opportunities. These findings have been replicated in various other longitudinal studies, and these are the protective factors that buffer the effects of risk factors. So the key finding is that resilient people use or benefit from protective factors in ways that overcome risks and create success in adverse circumstances. So in the youth development research, what predicts and promotes thriving? More recent body of research has taken a little bit of a different direction and investigates the question, what makes young people succeed? Peter Benson and his colleagues at the Search Institute in Minneapolis have synthesized the research on adolescent development, meta-analysis, if you will. What they identified was 40 assets or building blocks that young people need to thrive and to become successful, productive adults. So the previous research has shown, it's divided into both external and internal assets. So the building blocks or assets are experiences, values, skills, and opportunities young people need to develop to their full potential. They're grouped as external, such as those traits that communities, schools, and families need to provide, and internal, those traits the individual brings to the table. As you can see, the findings from both research bodies, prevention and resiliency, have been incorporated. The Search Institute has used a survey for 6 to 12th graders to create an assessment, kind of a snapshot of how young people in a community are doing at any given time, at a particular given time. On average, less than half of the young people in a community have 20 or more assets. So the message from that is clear, and if you have a chance to participate in that and do an asset evaluation of your school community, it can be very telling on what direction programmatically might need to be shored up. We need to build. Yes.
If you would, I wouldn't mind making a comment here too.
Sure.
The internal and external assets, just because the assets are internal, does not mean that we can't impact them either. And I think that's
absolutely
an important distinction for especially SAP teams, because some of those internal assets, there are definite ways that we can address those issues and help a student to develop those.
Absolutely, without a doubt. And we'll kind of break down these different categories of assets, both internal and external. And we can, as we break them down, we can see how we can have an impact on them as a school community. Without a doubt, there's very few assets that we cannot influence. I dare say just about all of them we can, in a positive way, and help our students develop those assets. So again, external assets are the settings, relationships, and activities that create a positive environment for young people. The first category, the external assets and the internal assets are separated into 4 categories. The first category of external assets that was identified is support. So these are 6 assets that external assets that are important for predicting positive and pro-social decision making for students, for adolescents and children. So family support. There's a reason it's number 1. again, family members, parents, grandparents, that core family group, wherever they may be, because families for each individual will look different, but that primary family support, that family life, that core family group provides high levels of love and support. That there's family communication, positive family communication, that they talk to each other, that the young person is willing to seek out advice and opinions and be able to discuss things openly with their parents, or whoever their guardian is, to have that open and positive communication. That they have other adult relationships. So the research shows a young person receiving support from 3 or more non-parent adults, that they have positive relationships and support from 3 other adults in their life. That could be teachers, educators, coaches, members of the faith community, pastor, priest, that the person lives in a caring neighborhood where where people look out for each other in their home community, that there's a caring school environment, that the schools are viewed by that young person as caring and encouraging, that their expectation is that they can and will succeed. And then the parents being involved in school. This is a tricky one. It is something we can affect, but sometimes it's difficult for schools to get parents to take the time to be involved. But sometimes it's as simple as developing those open lines of communication between the school and the households, even if it's an email sort of thing, that can make a difference, because it's showing that the caring adults in that kid's life are all on the same page.
And especially at the junior high and high school level, this becomes even more difficult as parents kind of start to abdicate, if you will, their responsibility in that schooling. So I think it's even more crucial for us at the junior high and high school level to encourage parent involvement wherever we possibly can.
Absolutely, and there tends to be a greater amount of involvement between parents and schools at the elementary level, and there seems to be those opportunities don't necessarily grow less, but the parent is a child stretches their wings, so to speak, and does developmentally what they're supposed to be doing, which is separating from the parent. There's less opportunity for that parent to be involved. So the next category is empowerment. The community values youth. Do you value youth in your building? Do the students know that? Are they encouraged to participate? Are they encouraged to give their opinion? Are they heard not judgmentally? Youth as resources. Young people are given useful roles, not just let's have an event where youth can feel good for a day, but things that they could do on an ongoing basis, that they see that they're providing a service. And again, service to others is the next asset, that they're able to, that a young person who serves in the community 1 or more hours per week. And that can be any number of things. That could be helping a neighbor. That could be volunteering at a food pantry. That could be volunteering at their church or their faith community. Safety. That the young person feels safe at home, at school, in the neighborhood. It's hard to feel like they can reach out and be a part of a community if they don't feel safe. I think in empowerment, safety is crucial. And again, this is something that all of these empowerment is one of the things that we as educators can have one of the greatest impacts on, because we can provide our young people with these opportunities to serve, to be given useful roles, to show that they have value in the community, as a part of the community, in effect impacting the safety or their perception of safety, at least at school and in the neighborhood. Boundaries and expectations. Without boundaries and expectations, there's chaos. And adolescents, young people, do not thrive in chaos. They will never ever tell you this, but teenagers and preteens want rules. They want boundaries. It makes them feel safe. When a family has clear rules and consequences and monitors the young person's whereabouts, it provides them with a sense of safety that someone is watching out for them, that someone is there to keep them safe even as they're taking risks, which is normal for adolescent development. That there's boundaries at school, that there are clear rules and consequences at school, that they know that if they miss 5 or 6 days of class, that they're going to have an attendance review board. They're going to be called and they're going to be sitting down and talking to someone. That it's not okay to miss 50 days of school and that there will be no consequence for it, or that they can avoid taking tests or whatever. That there are clear rules and consequences, that there are boundaries in their neighborhood, that parents are okay with other parents setting rules and limits for the kids in the neighborhood, that no matter what house they go to, it's going to be safe and it's going to be monitored, and that parents will be calling each other. That there are adult role models, that parents and other adults model positive, responsible behavior. If you're having house parties where parents are getting together and getting drunk, that is the type of behavior that's modeled for the teens. And those are the types of behaviors that they see as okay. If it's okay for the adults, it's okay for them. So it's important that the parents and other adults model positive, responsible behavior. That there's positive peer influence. That the friends, the people that they're hanging out with, are also making good, responsible decisions. And finally, as far as the boundaries and expectations, that there are high expectations, that both parents and teachers encourage the young person to do well, to work to the best of their ability, and to succeed to the extent of their natural talents and abilities. And constructive use of time. This is another area that we can certainly have an impact on. Creative activities that a young person spends 3 or more hours per week in some form of creative outlet, whether it's music or theater or art, doodling, that they're exercising the creative part of their brains, that there are youth programs, young persons spending 3 or more hours per week in sports or clubs or organizations at school and or out in the community, so that they're participating in youth groups in their church, that they're participating in clubs at school, that they're interacting with their peers in pro-social ways, that they're involved in sports, that they're constructively engaged in pro-social activities. Religious community, that a young person spends 1 or more hours per week in their faith community. Whether that's going to a youth group, going to a religious service on a weekly basis, that they're connected to their faith community. And then time at home, that the young person is out with friends with nothing special to do, nothing planned, nothing, not a sport or a club or another activity, 2 or fewer nights per week, so that they're spending time at home so they can have that time to openly communicate with their parents, and have that the parents kind of know what's going on because they're home part of the time. So
I think one of the interesting things about those external assets is there are a couple of categories there. One is support and one is expectations. And if you look at research on successful schools, kids being successful in school, it is the schools that have high expectations and high supports where the kids do the best. And so it's interesting that those categories also fall into these assets.
Absolutely. And then we get to the external assets are the ones that certainly as a school community we have, we can get the most bang for our buck in a sense. We'll talk about, we're going to move on to internal assets, but certainly external assets with program development, with our structures and our policies in the school setting, we can certainly create these asset opportunities for our young people, and they certainly, help us have a frame of reference to look at our policies, look at what things we have available to our young folks, and point out perhaps the gaps or the holes that we need to fill in to give our young people the chance to develop these external assets. So the internal assets are values, skills, and beliefs that young people also need to fully engage with and function in the world around them. And again, these are divided into 4 categories. We have the commitment to learning. So there's an achievement motivation. The young person is motivated to do well in school. They want to do well in school. That they're engaged in school, that the young person is actively engaged in learning and a full participant. Homework. The young person reports doing at least 1 hour of homework every school day. Bonding to school. The young person cares about their school, that they have a relationship and a commitment to that school community, and that they read for pleasure. A young person reading for pleasure 3 or more hours per week. So just reading a book just for the heck of reading it, not because it's been assigned or not because it's for a particular class, but because they simply enjoy what they get out of that reading, that intrinsic motivation to learn. Do we have the ability to impact that? Absolutely. Certainly, our motivation can be enhanced, or it can be stymied by how we ourselves approach our engagement in the learning process. Students are going to be more engaged if we are engaged with them. They're going to feel more connected to a school if they have opportunities to meaningfully participate in the school community. Positive values. They're caring. They place a high value on helping other people. They have a sense of social justice. They're placing a high value on promoting equality and reducing hunger and poverty. That they have, essentially, they have compassion and a sense of justice, of right and wrong. They have integrity. That they act on their convictions and stand up for their beliefs. That they're honest. When they tell the truth, even if it's not easy. They accept and take personal responsibility for their own choices and actions without blaming others. That they're able to engage in restraint. The young person believing that it's not okay for someone of their age to engage in, to be sexually active or to use alcohol or other drugs, that they're able to, even if their peers are engaging in those behaviors, that they're able to restrain and refrain from engaging in those, even if it's not the popular choice.
And sometimes we have to redirect those positive values. Had a conversation recently during training about a young lady who had all of those kinds of values, those positive values, but was using those positive values to attack other kids, and helping her to redirect those positive values in a way that makes sense. So the reporting mechanisms to responsible adults and those kinds of things in the school, how do we help those kids to redirect those positive values in helpful rather than hurtful ways.
Absolutely. And that falls that kind of falls under the social competencies. It's a good segue there, Dale. We have and that really falls into interpersonal competence, that they have empathy and sensitivity and friendship skills. Someone who is dragging their high horse onto their soapbox and climbing on board and using their positive values to be judgmental of others does not show good interpersonal competence. So that would be, certainly it would be an asset that person would need help with developing. So planning and decision making, they know how to plan ahead. They know how to make good choices. We talked about interpersonal competence, cultural competence, that they have knowledge of and are comfortable with people of different backgrounds and different beliefs. That they have, they're sensitive to the differences that exist in just about every community and every school community. Resistance skills, that they have developed methods for coping with negative peer pressure and dangerous situations, how to get themselves out of it if they find themselves in a party where that was supposed to be drug and alcohol free and find out that it's not, how to extract themselves from that situation, or if they have someone who is pressuring them to engage in substance use, how to effectively say no, and having kind of thought out plans of how they would deal with those situations should they find themselves in them. Peaceful conflict resolution. A young person seeks to resolve conflict non-violently. That they have the ability to be assertive, that they can say no, they can say, no, I don't agree with you in a respectful way, and be able to negotiate those differences of opinion that arise between people. Okay. And positive identity, that they feel that they have a sense of personal power, that they feel that they have control over things that happen to them, that they do not have a victim mentality, that they can affect the outcome of where they go and what they do, that they have a feeling of self-worth and self-esteem, that they have a sense of self-worth and that they are important and have value. They have a sense of purpose, that that there's something that they can positively contribute to their community, to their school, to the world, so to speak, and that they have a positive view of the future, that they are optimistic that good things will happen for them, and positive begets positive, negative begets negative. When you have a negative frame of mind, you will find the negative in your environment, negative in your relationships, and conversely, positive will beget positive. So the relationship of assets to negative outcomes. So here's where the data comes in. One of the Search Institute's important contributions to the field has been to demonstrate a direct relationship between assets and outcomes. So what this slide shows is the relationship between assets and negative outcomes. The fewer assets, the more likely you will see negative behavior such as alcohol use and violence. So if you see the yellow columns denote percentage of alcohol use, the blue the percentage of teens engaging in violence, and it's very clear from this slide that those with very few assets are much more likely to engage in alcohol use or violence than those that have a higher number of assets. So even what you can see here is that even the development of a few more assets, for those that have 7, 8, 9 assets, you develop a few more assets with that young person, and you can cut their tendency to move towards alcohol use and violence almost in half if you look at the difference between 10 or fewer assets and 11 and 20 assets, even having a few things that you enhance in your own community to help develop some of these assets can make a tremendous impact. And these findings are based on a data set that by now includes well over 200,000 high school students. So it's not a small study, and it's not a small data set that these results are coming out of. And then similarly, the more assets a young person has, the more likely they are to succeed in school and make healthy behavior choices. And the purple is succeeding in school, percentage succeeding in school. The blue is maintaining good health, and that means good physical and good behavioral health. So it's, as you can see, again, that building a few more assets can certainly make a significant difference. Succeeding in school, going from 10 to the 11 to 20 triples the chance that they will succeed in school. If you can move someone from less than 10 to the 21 to 30 range, it multiplies their almost by 6 times. So there's some significant research showing that the impact of asset building is very real. So it's the strength of the asset building model is that it's easily understandable. It's something that is not scary to communities. It's not as scary to parent group as saying we need to address the scourge of drugs in our school versus we need to provide our kids with some more meaningful opportunities to engage. That it's something that communities can get behind because it doesn't have the stigma attached with addressing issues or problems in a school community. So essentially, when it comes right down to the full bouncing arrow guys are fun. Here we go. Protective factors. You increase the protective factors, you reduce risk factors, and you are more likely to have positive outcomes. So here's another body of research that influences and supports positive youth development. The National Research Council researched community-based youth development programs and identified 8 features that are key elements of effective youth development settings. So you can see physical and psychological safety. Safety, again, being first. If you're not feeling, it goes back to one of Dale's favorite topics, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've got to feel safe. You've got to have that safety level satisfied before you can engage in higher level self-actualization type activities. So that there's structures that support relationships, opportunities to belong, positive social norms, meaning that looking at who's making good choices versus who's making bad choices. There's a difference between saying 25% of our kids are smoking marijuana versus 75% of our kids are choosing not to use marijuana. So the social norm is more focused on the positive, those making good choices, than on the negative, those making risky choices. There's support for efficacy and mattering. Again, that chance to make a difference and have a leadership role in a community. The opportunities for school building, and again, integrating the family, school, and community efforts, that there's a whole community effort taking place. It's not just the school that needs to take this on. It's something that the parents, the families, and the community needs to get behind in order to help give our young people the opportunities to develop these assets. Problem-free is not fully prepared. Fully prepared is not fully engaged. Quote by Karen Pittman. Research is important, but Enid Berry puts it in perspective. Karen Pittman is the theoretician who kind of pulled it all together. She illustrates her thinking with some catchy slogans. You may have heard this one before, which tends to, in some ways, kind of encapsulate positive youth development. Even if they're without problems. It doesn't mean that they're fully ready to engage in being successful, and even if they're prepared, it doesn't necessarily make them engaged. So we want young people to be fully engaged and problem-free. So we have to create those opportunities for them to be able to engage, and with those opportunities we'll develop assets which will likely lead them to not having the issues or engaging in those risky behaviors that can lead to problems.
I think that's an interesting quote because it really ties to some of the additional research that Search Institute has done, showing the number of assets decreasing for kids across as they get older. So in grade school and early junior high, those assets are relatively high. As they continue on through junior high and high school, those assets tend to decrease. And part of that is the change in structure that we have from elementary schools to middle and high school, and the connectedness and those kinds of things that are part of those assets, and some of the Research Council stuff as well.
Absolutely. It's as you deal with larger data sets, the great thing about having large data sets is you can dig into that data even deeper and identify, start breaking it down into age groups, into cohorts where you can kind of drill down and really discover where some of the significant gaps are and where you're going to get the most bang for your buck as far as your efforts go, which does lead to, again, do you have a good data set to work with? So utilizing something like the 40 development assets as a guide, just looking at the definition of what is positive youth development philosophy or approach that guides communities in the way they organize programs and supports so that young people can develop to their full potential. So do you have good data? Do you have a good sense of what opportunities are within your school and within your community that you can either pull students into or connect them to on the outside that will help them develop these assets? And as you're working with kids and kids come to your attention where they might have deficits in assets, do you have a system to identify that, to identify where those gaps are, and then how do you connect them to those things that will help them develop those assets? And that's a place where student assistance really can come in handy, is identifying those deficiencies and helping develop a plan to fill in the gaps. So just to review a bit, reviewing the literature, these are again the key youth development principles, and this is kind of encapsulating what we've covered, as far as the Search Institute, National Research Council, and such. Positive outcomes. We're shifting from preventing problems to creating positive outcomes, such as competencies, connections, and caring relationships, positive values and expectations, meaningful participations. This also means that we're using a strength-based approach. We're not unfortunately, as an educational community in the United States, a lot of what we do is based on being identified for deficiencies. It's how RTI is implemented. We do testing and we figure out where there are deficiencies, and then we address those deficiencies through interventions. Well, positive youth development is the idea is to shift that viewpoint to working with a kid's strengths. Where are the assets? Where can we bolster them up in the assets they have and help them develop new ones? Another principle is youth voice. We are working with young people, not for them. We have to engage them as partners, create youth adult partnerships, listen to their expertise and perspective. They're living it, so they have expertise on their particular circumstance that we need to pay attention to. Involve all young people. And we need to provide support and opportunities to all young people, not just the high-risk youth or just the high achieving group. That doesn't mean we don't provide additional support to young people who face challenges. We need to involve all young people, no matter whether they're problem youth or high achieving youth. It's those youth in the middle that tend to get overlooked. Long-term involvement is a community. We have to support young people throughout their development, through their 18th, 20th, 25th birthday, as they're adjusting to their changing developmental needs. Adolescence doesn't end at age 18. The period of development for adolescence goes through age 24, 25 now. It means that that support is full time. So that's why the involvement of families and communities is so important, because it's a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week commitment. Community involvement, young people are surrounded by different environments, communities, neighborhoods, school, friends, family, online communities. Their community is much different than our community was when we were growing up. They have the whole world as their community in a sense. So we need to help them be good citizens, and we also need to engage the community around them that's in their immediate environment, to such as businesses and faith communities, civic organizations, to be involved with our youth. And collaboration. It's not a program it's not one school doing one thing. It's not one provider. It's bringing different community sectors and partners together. And collaborative strategies need to be developed and emphasized. Okay. So this is how youth development differs from youth services. There's different layers of youth work. The bottom three are from what we call tertiary, secondary, and primary prevention, and this has really been our focus for a long time. Treatment and problem prevention. What we're looking to do with positive youth development is moving beyond that to preparation and skill building, meaningful participation, to shared leadership. So again, an effective youth-adult partnership. So going beyond just the identify problems and address it. This is more let's prepare them, let's build skills, let's build assets, let's help them build on their strengths. All youth, each individual youth has strengths that they bring to the table, and we need to help them develop those strengths. We need to partner with them. We need to give them opportunities to engage and help them develop those assets that will likely lead them on a more positive trajectory. So with about 5 minutes left, I wanted to give you the opportunity to ask any questions. This is a really brief overview of key concepts and some research areas that have influenced positive youth development, and hopefully it will be useful to you in looking at where you can implement programs or initiatives or policies in your own buildings that can help students and young people develop those 40 developmental assets that will help them, again, stay on a positive trajectory.
And I have opened up your mic, so if you have any questions for Don, feel free to ask those now.
All right. Well, my contact information is on the last slide. If you do have questions that come up later on, as far as program development or things of that nature, do feel free to get in contact with me or Dale at the Student Assistance Center, and we'd be happy to help you guys out.
Yeah, we'll be happy to help you in any way. You can always contact me via my email, which is dale.gasparovic, GASPAROVIC, @prevention.org. You can also go on our website at www.prevention.org. Also, don't forget to follow us on Twitter at SA Center PF is our Twitter handle. We thank you all for coming today. We hope this has been a useful piece of information for you as you continue to develop your programs and practices within your schools and programs. Thank you all for attending today.